So yeah, Phoebe and Liam have made excellent presentations on technical topics. And my presentation is not on a technical topic. It is on teamwork. I don't know, it can be a technical topic if you want it to be. In fact, it's also on how to carry useless teammates. So while we're on the topic of technical topics, there are papers on teamwork. They do exist. Nobody's read them. This middle paper is on communication in building something productive relationships. The important thing about all of these papers is that nobody's read them, as I said. And I know that nobody's read them because this paper on the left here is actually not on teamwork. It's on dialogue and communication in film. And this paper on the right here is also not on teamwork. It's on the migratory behaviors of chinstrap penguins. So given that no one's listened to or read through these papers, why should you listen to me? I have a couple of reasons. I have gotten reasonably good marks in all of my group work courses. So that's your 1531, your computer architecture, and DESIN. I also volunteer as a scout leader and have been an active member of Scouts for like 10 years, something like that, long time, and teamwork, all that. There's a third very good reason, definitely. And I also have a fourth dot point because you've got to have 4 dot points. So what does bad teamwork look like? The really big thing about bad teamwork is you get arguments, insults, and lots of yelling and generally non-productive behavior. So arguments, insults, and yelling are bad, right? They're not constructive. So if you're in a meeting and you're yelling at someone else and you're insulting them, that's not getting anything done, right? First issue, number one, you're in a meeting, you're supposed to be doing meeting things. You're supposed to be like talking about the project, what you're going to do, what you have done, all that stuff. And if you're having an argument, you're insulting people, all of that stuff, you're not doing the meeting stuff, so you're wasting valuable meeting time. It's also harmful. So you're not just not being constructive, you're being destructive. Insulting teammates there's 2 ways it can go. One of them is they can take it to heart, and then they will be very sad, right? They will be sad and they won't be motivated to continue to work, right? If you've just been told that your hard work sucks, you're not going to do more hard work. And that's not great. The other way is they will get combative and argumentative, and then that leads into the whole arguments, insults, and yelling cycle. And if you start to get into this cycle, then you end up losing developmental momentum, right? So progress stalls, people just spend all of their time in meetings not being constructive, and so you can't progress anywhere on a project. I've got an analogy. It's the Titanic. You've got your mental capacity of a rusty needle insults being the iceberg in the freezing cold water that's sinking your ship, and all your teammates are just running away because why would they stay on the sinking Titanic? Meanwhile, you are trying to bail out the entire Titanic with a single bucket, and you need to do 5 people's worth of work by yourself while also everyone is trying to sink the ship. So let's first have a look at some team composition. So we've got your 1531 team. It's got 5 people, very descriptive names. You've got teammate 0, Mr. 1, Miss 2, 3, and 4. And you join the team, right? You're on the team. So this is you. You are amazing, smart, brilliant. You have infinite brain cells, right? You are the best person on this team by a long way. Nobody can even touch you. And given this is Linux society, I figured Chris Hemsworth is maybe not the best example, so let's change that up. And then you have, often when I hear these horror stories from DESIN and 1531, it's not an entire bad team, it's a single person. So let's put that single person in as well. And just for the record, Liam volunteered to be the sacrifice here. And this single teammate cancels out all of your infinite brain cells that you've contributed to the team. And this is the rough team description that you get when you hear these horror stories. You're like, there's you, you're amazing, you're brilliant, you are trying to carry the team, and you have Liam cancelling out all your brain cells. But there are 3 other people on your team. And you have no idea how many brain cells these other people on your team have because you're not talking to them, you're not communicating, you're not getting them to do anything, right? These are actual real people. They have hobbies, they have things they enjoy, and they don't want to fail the course. So what do these people constitute? Well, they constitute, hold on, yeah. They are aiming for a distinction, right? They don't have high aspirations. And they're probably going to get like a pass, to be honest. They're not the smartest cookie on the shelf. However, they are very important because they are free labor. So the way it's supposed to work is you've got a bunch of tasks that need to get done, right? Your iterations, you've got functions that need to be implemented, all that. And you've got your 5 people, and they should all work, right? It's like a worker queue, threads, all that stuff. And you get the task completed and all that. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work because your teammates will start bashing each other because they're all little kids and have no idea what they're doing, right? They might as well be toddlers. So what's the solution when children are getting injured? You put them in one of these. I'm surprised that Google search worked, to be honest. Yeah, you put all of your teammates in one of these, and then you need to get rid of Liam. You need to somehow stop him from affecting your team, and you need to put your team in these orb balls to stop them from being affected by external influences, and so that they can actually contribute even just a small amount on the project, which will save some of your time and help you carry them pretty much. So the ideal situation really becomes you need to stand behind every one of your teammates and make sure they're doing the right thing. Now, that's a lot of work. That's too much work for a single person. So ideally what you can do is you can train up your teammates so that the entire queue stands behind everyone and does all of the work. And so you have a very large spike of work in week 1 where you try and explain to your teammates how they should be managing and running the team. And you don't need to be the team leader to do this, right? You just need to give them advice and manipulate them, basically. The other important thing about this is the project only lasts for a fixed amount of time. So as long as you can delay any problems until after week 10 or whenever it's due, then you won't have any issues, right? So you can try and solve the problem, or you can just keep on delaying it until you get to week 10, and then you can let all hell break loose after then. So here's some common complaints that I hear. First is your teammates depend on you too much. This is you've done the first bit correctly, and now your teammates are looking to you to carry them, right? And this is an issue because it means they're not going to do as much work, and doing an entire group project by yourself is a lot of work. So one way to solve this is by telling them you will fix their issues, but not right now. So you'll say, I'm busy now, I got to do something other, whatever, right? I've got to do 1521 instead. But I will take a look at it tomorrow. And the important thing about this is you give a exact deadline or a time frame, so they know when to expect it to be done. And as long as it's not done now, you're like, okay, I'll get it done in a couple days. As long as you do actually get it done in a couple days, you keep the project rolling, right? You keep things happening. However, you also give them an opportunity to think about the problem that they have, right? So in that time, in that day, in between when they've come to you and when you fix the problem, they're going to be thinking about it because they're going to be stuck on it. And that helps them think about the problem and learn, basically, and develop their own intuition for how the problem should be solved and sort of get the ball rolling for keeping on working on the project. So this is the same slide. That's the same slide. Okay, the other problem is my teammate isn't doing something. You've asked your teammates to do something, you've given them a deadline, you're like, okay, by the next meeting I want to have these 3 functions implemented, and they don't do it. So the important thing is bring it up at the meeting, right? Bring up the deadlines that have passed at the meeting, and almost name and shame. And you don't need to name and shame, but you need to make them feel as if they might be name and shamed. And it also helps if you set short and small achievable deadlines. So one sort of big issue that I've had people talk to me about as a complaint is that people will often not talk about their progress. So my AOS partner, for example, did Comp 3900 last term, and he would go to his group meetings and ask them to do a stand-up and be like, what have you all done? How's your progress on this stuff? And they'd say, it's in progress. And that's it. They wouldn't elaborate on where they were stuck at. So pretty much the solution to this is to break it down into smaller levels. And that way, they can say they're in progress, but at least you know what small item they're in progress doing. So instead of saying, I want this done in 2 weeks, say, I want this done in 3 days, I want that done in 6 days, and then you build up to the 2 weeks. And pretty much, yeah, you get status updates. So the next thing is my teammates' code sucks, right? They've done what I wanted them to do, but they've done it terribly. It doesn't work. It doesn't compile. It has 15,000 bugs. It's seg faults. What you do is you sit down with them and you explain to them why their code is wrong. Right? And sometimes this is style. Style is especially hard to explain. You need to explain readability. This is why you need to explain things in depth. So with readability, you don't just say, don't do this because it's bad for readability. You say, don't do this because we have a different code base convention, and that makes it harder for everyone else in the team to read the sections of code that you've written because they're used to seeing patterns that are elsewhere in the code base. And you need to fully elaborate it and fully explain so that they understand why what they're doing is wrong. And also, the longer you spend explaining a single concept to them, the more likely it is any one of the words that you say will stick in their head, right? So if you imagine you say like 3 words to them and only 1 in 10 words stick in their head, then there's only a 30% chance they're actually going to fix the problem. If you spend 100 words telling them, then they'll remember 10% of those words, and hopefully they'll be 10% of the way to fixing the problem. Another common issue I've seen is my teammate does everything with ChatGPT. Now this kind of goes into the my teammate's code sucks. However, the problem is you can't explain it to them, right? Because they've done it with ChatGPT, and so they haven't even written the code. So even if they register that 10%, it's not going to go through to ChatGPT. So at that point, you need to sit down with your tutor, right? You sit down with, or I don't know, your manager. If you're at work and you're working with other people in a team, you might want to sit down with your manager or your boss or whoever. And you need to explain your issue to the tutor. Explain to them why, again, in depth, why you think they've been doing ChatGPT. Come up with concrete examples. I know ESO has been doing a lot of that. And then the other thing you do is you bring your tutor into your meetings. And you get your tutor to specifically look out for signs of AI abuse, because that way they will be able to gather evidence themselves, which is significantly more concrete than he said, she said. And hopefully that works. If it doesn't, then you can kind of go into this next point, which is, oh, hold on. Yeah, also ask for bonus marks if you get that. This next point is my teammate doesn't speak English. This is probably the most difficult complaint, I think, to deal with, because Google Translate doesn't work. Talking to your tutor doesn't really work either. And the reason for that is that the students who don't really speak English tend to be international students. And international students who come in and can't speak English, they all need to pass an English competency test. And that English competency test is normally administered by some external third party. However, UNSW has stepped in and said, hey, we can administer the English competency test, and they want the revenue from the international students. So the English competency test that UNSW provides isn't actually really a proper English competency test. And the reason why talking to your tutor about this doesn't work is because it's your tutor's word against UNSW's word. and UNSW is generally a little bit more reliable as far as important people are concerned than a single tutor. One thing you can do is force push over all their commits. Now, this is dangerous to do. Yes. This is...
Your tutor will be very sad with you. Don't get caught.
So, yeah, don't force push over... Hold on. Yeah, don't force push over all their commits. It is a tool in a toolbox. You can think about potentially force pushing over some particularly bad commits, right? So how do you resolve the actual problem if my teammate doesn't speak English? Let's start this again. Report them to ICE. No, don't report them to ICE. There isn't really much you can do, to be honest. The part of the reason is group work is very heavily tied to communication. Communication is pretty important, and if you don't speak English, it's very hard to communicate. So, I don't know, you can try to establish a line of communication. You can also try to manipulate your teammates into thinking what they're doing is good work and making sure that what they're actually doing is not completely screwing up your code base, right? So try and manipulate them into thinking that they're fixing bugs is really important and their 2-line changes are much more important than their 50-line changes. And that way you only need to look over 2 lines of changes. And it's also possible that those 2 lines are more important than the 50 lines of changes, right? If you've got a hard to debug issue, I know for AOS I had an issue where I was completely writing over my pages with zeros after I was swapping them back in, and that particular issue led to invalid instruction faults, like significantly later in the process, which was a pain to debug. I spent most of my weekend doing that. So you can try and change the task that they're assigned to something which requires less communication. So if your teammate doesn't speak English, you need to try to establish a line of communication. You can change the work that they're doing. Be careful, this is not traditional teamwork stuff. You need to be a little bit more radical. Your tutors will not be very happy. Ultimately, you need to sort of give them an ultimatum, right? International students are very worried about failing because of their visas. So if you can communicate to them that they might fail if they continue doing what they're doing, then that can help. Ultimately, what you want to do is you want to go from carrying your teammates in the eyes of your teammates to everyone working together. Now, you can still be carrying your teammates, but your teammates shouldn't know that, right? They need to think they're doing good. And then that way they will do at least a little bit of good and help you, right? Remember the whole Titanic analogy and bailing it out. Thank you.
Fantastic. Any questions? Any questions for Wiki?
My question is not worth delaying the whole thing for. Essentially, what is the value of just straight up lying to your teammates? Assume your teammates are capable and rational, but they have a tendency to procrastinate everything till the last minute. I, at point 2 in 1531, just felt tempted to just edit the README deadline, just move it forward 2 weeks, because then they would work 2 weeks earlier. Leaving aside the issues of traceability, I'm getting some apprehensive reactions from the back left.
No, I think that's fine, to be honest. I mean, don't let your tutor catch you, but
Well, that was fine.
yeah, I think it's fine. Ultimately, this is engineering. One of the big things about engineering is getting stuff done. Like, there's the whole military saying, if it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid, right? As long as it works, right? If you can push the project over the deadline, that's all that really matters. How you go about doing that can be a little bit morally flexible, I think. Obviously, don't, break the law, don't do, yeah.
Personally make the argument here that if your teammates are rational people that want to pass,
Yeah.
then they can be reasoned with, and the reasoning I would use is you are not going to be able to procrastinate on this and get away with it because this is a much bigger project than you have done in the
The
past.
problem is,
Yeah.
all my teammates could get away with it. They're all extremely capable, 10x engineers, whatever. I just didn't like doing everything in the last 6 hours. I want to do it in the first 6 hours.
Okay, in that case, the better argument is you won't be able to continue getting
So-
away with it without burning out.
If that happens, one thing that you can try to do is doing a lot of the coursework up front. And then your teammates will see that you've done a lot of the coursework and will be worried that they might lose, especially if you bring it up. They'll be worried that they might lose marks for not having contributed as much. And then hopefully that can help them pick up the pace. I know with my AOS partner, I kind of ran ahead very early and that accidentally happened. Nothing against him. He's a very capable, talented developer.
I think generally having internal deadlines and getting, I wouldn't say angry, but perhaps a little cranky if people don't meet the internal deadlines. Like, by the end of this week, we need to have everything in TypeScript. By the end of this week, we need to have upgraded everything to a web server. That is, I think, a little bit of a better approach than perhaps outright lying to people.
Yeah. Often there are better approaches. I'm not going to say you should never do it. There's probably a situation where it will be useful.
Sorry, we're running out of time.
Yeah.